we have a ruler postulate. And the ruler postulate tells us that the points on the line can be paired one-to-one with real number coordinates. That means that we can take a line and we can assign real numbers to them, and it can go by like the distances on a ruler. So they can measure length. So wow, I can't spell today. Okay. The distance between any 2 points equals the absolute value of the difference of their coordinates. You subtract the lesser from the greater, you should get the correct distance, even if the numbers are negative. Okay, the segment addition postulate says if B is between A and C, so we're going to draw that real quick. It'll give me my tool. Okay, so I've got this segment. And on this end is A, on this end is C, somewhere in the middle-ish between them, doesn't have to be in the middle, is B. So this length and this length add up to make the whole thing. So AB, remember I showed you on the board that if there's no line above it, this is referring to the length. So this is saying the length of AB. This is the length of BC. And this is the length of AC. So basically what this is saying is the two parts equal the whole. Okay, the midpoint postulate is that a segment has exactly one midpoint. So if I have this segment, and I've got my endpoints, I don't know, C and D, there's only one place that is exactly halfway between these, right? This is not a midpoint. That's not a midpoint. A midpoint, I'm going to hope that that's the right length, M, would mean that this length and this length are equal. So there's only one place where you can put that midpoint that makes the two sides the equal length. Kind of makes sense, right? That's why it's a postulate and not a theorem, because it makes sense. Same with this. This is a postulate because it makes sense that if you take a segment, you break it into two pieces, the two pieces equal the whole thing. Okay, so we use the ruler postulate to find the distance between two points, or to find the length of a segment. So if I have point A and point B that have coordinates of -3 and 7, I can calculate the distance, and what I can do is I say 7 minus -3. If I always subtract the lesser from the greater, that's the same as 7 plus 3. Do you guys remember that? Minus a negative equals plus. So the distance is going to be 10. And just to show it on the number line, that's point B, this is point A. If I count the distance, it's 10. So we'll just review this really quickly. If you're adding integers, if they have the same sign, you're going to add the numbers and keep the sign. So for example, positives, those are easy. They're both positive, add them together. If they're negative, same thing, but the answer is going to be negative. Okay. If you have different signs, you're going to subtract the numbers. And keep the bigger sign. Well, the sign of the number that was bigger. I'm just going to put bigger in parentheses or quotes because it's not greater, because positives are always greater than negatives, but if you had positive 3 and negative 10, I'm counting 10 as bigger. Does that make sense? Okay, so we'll use that example. If I have 3 plus negative 10, they're opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract, but my answer is going to be negative because 10 was bigger. Whereas if I had negative 3 plus 10, still opposite signs, and I'm going to subtract, but it'll be positive 7. So whichever number is bigger, that's the sign you end up with. Then you have subtracting. And for subtracting, you want to add the opposite. Okay, so if I have negative 5 minus 6, that's the same thing as negative 5 plus negative 6. So they have the same sign, so I'd add them together. If I had 5 minus 6, that's the same thing as 5 plus negative 6. Opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract. And the 6 is bigger, so it's going to be negative 1. And then if I have minus a negative, well, here's like a little 2 memory tools. Let me write it twice. Okay, the first one you might have seen is you connect the dots and it looks like a big plus sign. So now I have 5 plus 6. So that's 11. The other one I came up with myself is if you do that, doesn't he look like a happy person? And happy people are positive. So it's 11. I think of adding and subtracting like you're collecting. Okay? If your signs match, you collect them all up. So here I have 5 negatives and 10 negatives. So I collect them all together and I have 15 negatives. But if your signs don't match, the positives and the negatives will cancel each other out. So I'm going to actually use smaller numbers for this because I don't want to make 10. So if I do 5 plus negative 3, okay, that's 5 pluses and 3 minuses. And every plus minus combination cancels. And what I have left over are 2 pluses. So that's just another way to think of it. And if those don't work, I have a lot more. So just let me know. Okay, so AC. AC is all of this right here. So that is 6 plus 2. You could just draw it and just this part. You don't have to write all the rest of it. Only the part from the line down. BD, that's all of this right here. That's BD. So it's 2 plus 7, so it equals 9. And then AD is the whole thing. So it's 6 plus 2 plus 7, so it is 15. A bit more complicated, okay? We've got midpoint, okay? Now, if you remember, midpoint means we've got halves, and they're equal, okay? So that means that this length and this length, so that's a distance, and those distances are the same, okay? So what that tells me is this equals this. So I say 2x minus 5 equals x plus 3 because they're the same length. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, is there anybody that doesn't like connect with? Okay, so we know that these lengths are the same, but we don't know what the length is. Like they might both be 10, they might both be 5, I don't know. So we have to solve it. So I know that 2x minus 5 is equal to x plus 3. My first step, I want to get all my x's on the same side. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides.
What is that called? Problem solving.
But what I like to think is, okay, so this x is being traded to this team. And over here, he's positive, but if you trade him to another team, he doesn't wear the same jersey. So now he's negative. Right? I mean, you don't put somebody from one team to another and they keep the same jersey. They changed jerseys, so he changed signs because he changed sides. Okay, so 2x minus x is just 1x. That negative 5, I just carry it down. Okay, now I want to get this 5 over with the other numbers. I want like all my letters on one side, all my numbers on the other. We don't want to mix. So he's negative here, so I'm going to add him to both sides. Okay, that x comes down, those go away, 8. So x equals 8. Right? Now I found x, that was the first part, but then it says then find PR. Well, I know that this half and this half are the same. So if I find one of these lengths, I can just multiply by 2, right? To get the whole thing. So I'm going to do x plus 3 because that's easier, shorter. So x plus 3 is 8 plus 3, that's 11. So this half right here is 11. So that means this is here is 11. And so the whole thing, 22. I'm given just this problem without any other information. There's nothing you can do. You have to know, you have to be told that D is a midpoint. Okay? You have to know D is a midpoint. Or you have to be given the entire length of the whole thing. So I'm going to do 2 of those problems where I give you the midpoint and then where I give you the length of the whole thing, just so you know what to do with both, okay? But if I'm just given the information that's in black and not the blue, you can't, there's nothing you can do. You don't have enough information. Okay, but because now I know that D is a midpoint, that means that this length here is the same as this length here. The yellow parts are both equal. And because they're equal, that tells me I can set them equal to each other. Okay? Giant tip. If you see the word midpoint, you set the halves equal to each other. Halves. Okay? So that's that key word right there, midpoint. That tells you to set the 2 halves equal to each other. And maybe this half is of algebra and this half is like 12. You know, that can happen too. But you'll still set it equal to each other. You'd set this half equal to that half because of the word midpoint. Okay, so x is negative here. So to get rid of him, I'm going to add him to both sides. Okay. So 4x, bring down that minus 6, bring down that equal sign, bring down that 10. Okay. Now I want to get rid of the 6, The 6 is negative, so I'm going to also add hem to both sides. And the reason we do that is because the negative and positives cancel each other out, right? So if I have negative 6 and positive 6, I have nothing. Like, I owe you $6. I have $6. Oh, I paid you your $6, and now I have nothing. But you have $6 over here, right? Okay, so 4x equals 16. So that's telling me that 4 times x equals 16. So if I divide both sides by 4, that'll tell me what x equals. X equals 4. Okay, now if I was asked to find x only, then I would be done. But if I was asked to find CE, I have more to do. I know x equals 4, so I can plug that in. So that's negative 4 plus 10, so that's 6. So that tells me that this length is 6, and because it's midpoint, this length is 6. So CE is both of those halves put together, so it's 12. I'm going to come up. Again, if you have this information and you don't have any other information, there's nothing you can do because I don't know that Q is in the middle. Like, I don't know it's a midpoint unless I'm told it's a midpoint. But I'm not even going to be told that at this point. I'm going to be told that PR equals 22. That is telling me that this entire length, oops, wrong, this whole thing is 22. So that means PQ, this part, plus this part equals 22. So I'm going to write that PQ plus QR equals 22. Right? Part 1 plus part 2 equals 22. Hopefully that'll help. Well, PQ is x plus 4. And QR is 2x minus 3. So if it's a midpoint, you're going to set them equal to each other. If it's not a midpoint, part 1 plus part 2 equals the whole thing. Okay? Does that make sense? Right. So now I want to collect like terms. X's match, so I have x plus 2x, so that gives me 3x. And numbers match, so I have 4 minus 3, so that's 1. And that equals 22. And then I want to get this 1 over here with this 22, so I'm going to subtract it from both sides. So I get 3x equals 21. And then I want to get rid of that 3, so I'm going to divide it. And I get x equals 7. All right. 4a. RT, did you all get 16?
I did.
Yeah? Okay, so RT is this part. So you just add 11 and 5. Don't overthink it.
I was like really overthinking.
Yeah, don't overthink it. Okay, so try RU. And then I'll give you guys the answer for that one in just 2 seconds. Maybe I should do the Jeopardy. Do, 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 do. Okay. Did everybody get 26?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so those are okay now?
Those are very good.
So R to U, just add everything up. Okay. Now this one, between, and this one says midpoint. So remember, midpoint tells me to set equal. And between tells me I'm going to have like a 1 plus 2 equals whole kind of a situation. All right, so before we do that, we need to draw the pictures. So I am going to take that, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get that up there like that. Okay. So we have between L and N. So that picture is going to look like this. I have L and N with some M between them. That's a terrible N. Yeah, this is C. So I have M is between L and N. That's what the picture looks like. Okay, LM is 2x plus 1. MN, so from M to N, is 3x minus 2. And LN, that's this whole thing, is 24. Okay. So this one's C. That's the picture for C, and I'm going to draw the picture for D. I have M as the midpoint of LN, so I have another LN, right? But M is a midpoint. Ln is 4x plus 3, and Mn is 5x minus 1. And if it helps, you can label that midpoint so that you know that this length and that length are going to be the same. So when you're asked to draw these pictures, this is the process you'll need to go through. Okay? So for C, because it's not a midpoint, it's it's a between where I have a part 1, part 2, and the whole. This is the situation where you don't set them equal, you add them up. Here where I have a midpoint, that's the situation where you set these equal. So why don't you go ahead and try those, and then I'll do them too, and then we can compare answers, okay?